To the Big 12 in men's basketball. Seth Greenberg, ESPN, former college basketball coach and analyst with us on 365 Sports. Seth, it's great to have you on again. We always appreciate your time. So is the Big 12, they seem to have 2 or 3, 4 teams that are struggling this year. Is it still without a doubt, or your thoughts about the best conference in America?
To me, top to bottom, it's the best conference in America because there's no rocket share games. I mean, just the way it is. The SEC's having a monster year. There's no doubt about it in terms of the top. There are other conferences. The Big Ten has similar depth. But in terms of the number of teams that maybe can compete for national championship, if you don't play well in the Big 12, you're not winning. That's just the way it is. Great ownership, great passion, great energy, and tremendous coaching.
There are a couple teams. Look, Texas Tech is still 0-6. West Virginia's got their first win last night. Baylor started out 0-3 and now is on a 3-game win streak. Seth, you've coached teams before that have been on losing streaks. What is it like to get out of that, and what can it mean going forward for a team like West Virginia? We've seen what happened to Baylor, but is it relief? What would you describe that feeling when you're in a funk and you know you can win, but you can't find your way out of this hole?
Well, what it does, it challenges your culture, challenges your identity, and challenges your locker room. You're only as good as your locker room, and that's just the way it is. So you play in a league like the Big 12, it's kind of like Skip Prosser. The way Skip Prosser once told me when I first got into the league in the ACC, he said, you never know. It's never as good as you think it is. It's never as bad as you think it is. Because I remember one time we were number one in the country. We were playing as well as any team in the country. I looked at the schedule, and we had Maryland, North Carolina, and Duke, and we got whacked. Bam, 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 just like that. So, I mean, look, really what you have to do, it's almost like being a golfer. You got to have a short-term memory. You got to get to the next play. But to get to the next play, you must have a good locker room. You must have high character. You must have guys that understand that, this is part of it. Do I think Texas is as bad as maybe the record shows? No, I don't. Texas Tech isn't. And I think Fardars is going to change that a little bit. So, I mean, but yeah, it's the most important thing is you got to make sure your locker room is intact and you make sure that you continue to put good days on top of each other in practice to get that breakthrough win. And then once you get that breakthrough win, all of a sudden the whole mindset, the feeling in your locker room changes. But that's your challenge as a coach. That's your responsibility. The head coach especially can never have a bad day. He must have great energy, great passion, great attention to detail, great enthusiasm. And great focus because those players, once they get on the court, are going to follow your lead.
Ferran, what's it like to see what Seth, excuse me, sorry. Seth, what's it like to see what Jerome Tang is doing at Kansas State right now? Just an awesome win the other night over Kansas. The culture aspect seems to be growing and thriving, and obviously that was no more evident than him standing on the table and talking to KSU fans about the chants. It just seems like it's electric right now in Manhattan. Your thoughts?
Yeah, first of all, other people want to talk about the Big 12 besides Fran for sure. So, I know he thinks he's the only one that's allowed to talk about it. He's doing an expert on the Big 12. I understand that, and he is. But, the guys that are in the studio, believe me, we watch a lot of tape also. Mm-hmm. We just don't say coaches pay attention as much as fans. But, look, I mean, what Jerome has done is phenomenal. First of all, how he rebuilt his roster. I mean, think about that. I mean, it's 90% of their points are, coming from first-year players, which is incredible. But as important is setting the expectation, setting a standard for how you're going to play, bringing those guys into getting a whole new group of players to trust each other and be winning players, getting guys to buy into roles. Now, Keontae Johnson is an absolute matchup nightmare. But what he's done with Marquise Noel in terms of giving him the keys to the car and letting him be aggressive, the spacing they play with, the end-of-game coaching. And think about he's coaching against one of the great late-game coaches in the history of the game, and Bill Self, and he won that chess match. And then, the enthusiasm and the joy that he brings to what he's doing. I always talk to new head coaches, and a lot of times the job becomes a burden. And I always used to say, you wait all your life to become a head coach. You should enjoy every minute of it and every aspect of it. And as I watch Jerome Tang, I look at a guy that's enjoying every aspect and with every fiber of his being. And to me, that's pretty cool.
You know, you've watched Baylor, and obviously they've dug themselves out of what was 0-3. They've won 3 in a row, and no game is a easy one. So who knows what is the future. But they really, Seth, struggled on defense. There were other things they struggled with as well as far as turnovers, but they really have struggled on defense. What do you see, and are they getting it kind of back together?
Well, let's face it, their ball screen defense, when JPP went down, the ball screen defense has been impacted. There's no doubt about it. He was a great ball screen defender. So that's first and foremost. And then you're talking about two guys, L.J. Cryer and Adam Flagler, who play really hard, but they're not the lockdown defenders that Mitchell and Butler. Well, they're just not. They're good defenders. They're not great defenders. They just can't flat take you out. And then you're putting a freshman out on the perimeter as well. So you're probably your communication, and Keontae's phenomenal, but your communication and your ability to defend the ball and your ability to be connected, it takes time to develop that. It's just the way it is. But I think the lack of ball screen defense, their bigs not being able to contain, their perimeter guys not having that one just flat out sit down in the stance, I'm taking you out, lockdown defender, has been a little bit of a factor. But Scott is always Scott does. He stays positive but demanding. He's not going to lower his commitment to making sure they're an elite defensive team. He's trying to get these guys more purposeful, more connected, communicate better. And you see some of that in the last 3 games.
Do you feel this season nationwide is kind of like last year where it was going to be tough to pick, who the national championship contenders are going to be because there were more than in years past, that the transfer portal movement, all these things have created a situation where instead of where a few years ago it was like, well, Baylor and Gonzaga, that's the 2 teams that we're probably going to see. Now you've got 6 to 8 to 9 teams that could realistically fight their way in there.
Yeah, maybe more. Look, the transfer portal enables that. Think about it. Look what's happening at Missouri. Quick fix, boom. Look what's happening at Kansas State. Quick fix, boom. All the best players are not going to the same schools as much. The COVID year, you've got more teams that are older, experienced, mature. NIL enables people to bring in players maybe they wouldn't have gotten. And then I think, finally, just I don't know if it's right or wrong, but I think that for teams today, we saw how many upsets there were this weekend. For teams today, young players are so much under a microscope right now. There's so much static around them. I think it's really hard to keep teams in the moment. You can't isolate your team from the static. So therefore, we're seeing some teams that are a little bit more inconsistent. I don't know if that makes sense to you guys, but I really believe that there's so much static around these young players now that, keeping your team in the moment, keeping your team together is really hard. And then the older teams, I mean, if you look, this is really interesting. I had our stats people look this up yesterday. Like Oklahoma State, 96% of their points are scored by juniors and seniors. Missouri, 95% of their points, juniors and seniors. DePaul, who beat Xavier yesterday, 93% of their points, juniors and seniors. Seton Hall beat UConn yesterday, 90% of their points by juniors and seniors. Kansas State, 90% of their points by juniors and seniors. Mm. You're seeing even Carolina, you think about the Blue Bloods, the Carolinas, the Kentuckies, they have rosters where they have juniors and seniors. Teams that have broken through. Pittsburgh, who was really struggling, 84% of their points for juniors and seniors. TCU in your conference, top six returning scorers, 79% of their points, juniors and seniors. So, I think that college basketball's gotten older. There are more good teams. It's hard to win. There are more great home courts. Great players are spread out more. And then the static. People say, get off my lawn. No, it's true. There's so much static, whether it's static from parents, trying to monetize their children in a lot of ways, whether it's static from players' agents because of their NIL deals and trying to monetize them, whether it's static from the pressure of trying to get out as quickly as possible for the young freshmen that play college basketball. I just think there's a lot of static that impacts the team's ability to be, and then human nature. You know, like Arizona lost to Oregon the other day after Oregon got absolutely drilled by Arizona State. You know why? Human nature. It's just the way it is.
One of those teams that had to deal with probably more static than anyone is Texas, and Rodney Terry has been able to, in something that no one wishes happened at all, but did with Chris Beard, has gone down. The Texas team has seemed to have taken it as in stride as you can, and Rodney Terry's kept it going. What have you thought about the Horns being able to keep their heads above water after losing their head coach early in the year?
I think they've done a great job. They've got a great identity and a great culture in Texas. Very similar. I mean, again, you're going to be at that level, whether it's Baylor, whether it's going on to Kansas State, whether it's Texas, whether it's throughout, quite honestly, the Big 12 Conference. But, Texas especially. I've had a chance to spend a lot of time around their team. Every year when I take my little tour, I visit Baylor, I visit Texas Tech, I visit some programs. Obviously there's had tremendous amount of attention and negative publicity around that program. But that program is built on togetherness. That program is built on trust. That program, they walk the court before every practice, lock the arms, and chant together. And those are empty words. Those kids really buy into it. They've got a veteran coaching staff. They've got 6 seniors. They've got a good locker room. And they've been able to, in a very, very difficult situation, stay in the moment and maybe even appreciate the moment. Now, look, they've got flaws. You take Marcus Carr out as well as he's playing right now. Are they as good? That's what happened the other night. He got taken out of the game. I thought T.J. Altenberger did a great job, but he only had 8 points. At times they can get stuck, but Rodney Terry's done a phenomenal job in a very, very difficult situation, but he has a great support staff, and they've got really good young men in that program.
Houston and Kelvin Sampson, number one. They've been there quite a bit. Your thoughts? They've knocked on the door a couple of years ago. Baylor beat them up pretty good, but they are really, really good. They're experienced. They feel like they can beat anybody. Your thoughts about what the Cougars have been doing?
They look a lot like Baylor's national championship team to me. I said they have the best two-way backcourt in the country with Sasser, obviously Shed, and Mark. Similar to that great backcourt that Scott had. They've got a developing front court with Jarris Walker, who's you think the light bulb's going on, but you know what? It's got to stay on. Don't think that light bulb going on. The key is staying on. They're gonna run the table. They're gonna be the overall number one seed. They defend, they rebound. Sasser's starting to look like Davion Mitchell to me. And that's the ultimate compliment, because I thought that guy and he and Jerry were just fierce winning players in the moment, best when their backs were against the wall, made plays down the stretch with poise. I think they're for real, but they're going to have to do the NCAA tournament because I don't think they're going to get challenged the rest of the regular season.
Seth, Kansas State's got to be a part of the discussion. Iowa State made their run last year, and they're good again. Is there somebody else around the country that's kind of on your radar? Is that, wow, they so far through where we are, 15, 17, 20 games or whatever, is one of the surprise teams for you?
Well, I wouldn't say surprised because I thought Xavier was going to be really good. Sean Miller's a very, very good coach. And, he inherited a very, very good team. So I would say they're a team that has caught my eye. I love Rutgers. Rutgers is the team, everyone thinks of Jimmy Valvano's speech, Rutgers. But if you look at this team, it goes back to the same thing. What's their DNA? What's their identity? They've got an older team. They've got last year's defensive player of the year in the Big Ten and Caleb McConnell. They got a 6'7" point guard and Paul McKay. They got Cliffo Marie, a 6'11" center that blocks shots and can defend on the floor. They got Cam Spencer, just transferred from Loyola, who's not afraid of the moment. They've got big athletic wings and Mag and Hyatt. I think that we're not talking enough about them, and obviously, Purdue wasn't preseason top 25, and the freshman backcourt's played at a high level, and Zach Edey is an immovable object.
You mentioned, in my last question for you, Seth Greenberg, ESPN, we appreciate you as always, but that you're in the studio. You guys are watching games. You watch a ton of tape or film, whatever we call it these days. What goes on from the time you're in the studio to start the constant updates and analysis of a game. Is it kind of rapid fire where you don't get much of a break?
Yeah, you don't get a break. You got about 6 games on at once, which is basically not very good for my ADD. So I've got my computer in front of me, and I've got stat broadcast up to bounce around and look and see what's going on a little bit. We've got our rundown. We're probably taping something for ESPNU early in the day, doing Sports Center. But once the games start, we obviously want to lock into the game that's on our air. But I'm doing, mostly on Monday and Tuesday we do ESPN. But you also got to have a feel for certain games around the country. You got to do your homework. It's like anything else, and I'm sure you guys are the same. It's all about your habits. It's all about your preparation. So I spend the whole day, on the treadmill watching tape of games on my iPad. Then I come over here and I break down, trends of players. Who's played well in the last 4 games, what teams are doing, lineups. Systems, styles of play, whatever I think. And then I update that every 2 weeks. What I do is I'm old fashioned. I got a pad and I got all the major conferences plus the American, the Big East, the West Coast Conference, and then my one big leagues that are teams that are starting to kind of separate themselves, like FAU or Charleston. And, I just break down the last, every couple of weeks, I break down every single team that has a chance to be in the NCAA tournament, quite honestly, and just try to get a good feel for trends. Where's that team at right now? What's making them click? So I have a better idea when I'm watching film of what I'm looking for. And that's kind of my mindset as I prepare each and every day.
Seth, it's always great. Thanks for being on the show. Appreciate your time. Hope to have you on again down the road, and you do a great job as the game. They've got big Monday coming up, Kansas and Baylor on Monday night at the Farrell Center.
Look forward to it. I'll give Priscilla your guys' regards.
You're killing us. Thank you, man. Appreciate your time.
Thanks, guys.
Seth Greenberg from ESPN. Absolutely. When Baylor